Hey, what's up guys, Teach over here. How are you guys doing today? So this is going to be a very brief video talking about Fire and Ice Hand. Those two cards which have come out in Dragons of Legend. Proven to be like incredibly broken. Not incredibly broken, I mean, they are kind of balanced in some level. But, it's kind of more like splashed into everything. And I don't know, I've been discussing like this topic with a few people because obviously the ban list is coming up. I believe it comes about a day or two after Euros, or it's a day or two after the American Nationals, which I believe is sometime at the beginning of next month. So it's coming up very fast now. So we need to discuss whether or not Fire or Ice Hand are going to get hit. And the thing is that a lot of people are saying that should they get hit anyway? But I feel like evaluating previous metas, previous decks, and stuff like that, and the way that the game has progressed over time, we can take that and to say that Fire and Ice Hand is not. It's not going to be an if. It's more of a when because of what we know. So an example which I want to talk about. If it's going to let me scroll between them, there we go. So we got Murmurs here, right? Murmurs are a great deck, right? Murmurs came about at the end of 2012, and it was weird because obviously the wind-up format was dying out because obviously Shark and Magician was the best deck. So Mermails were amazing. They just took over and they completely wiped out wind-ups. Wind-ups still got hit, but Mermails took over and they started winning tournaments and they were just amazing. They were just outright the most powerful deck in the game. Fire Fist came about and Mermails still dominated because they still were amazing. They still had some amazing cards like Mermail Hibiscus, as you can see in the picture. But what happened is that once January rolled around, people were like, Abyss Tears, great. So, when's Mermail getting hit? It's obviously not healthy for the game that they exist because every other deck can't beat them. They were by far the most annoying deck to play, and they were super expensive. Mermail, Abyss Megalo was super expensive. So it was elitism at its finest. I mean, you had to either join them, by spending a shit ton of money, or you had to play against them and lose on a regular basis. With using something like Abyss Dweller was like your only out. So it was very difficult. So Fire Fist came about and they got wiped out. But people were like, why didn't Mermails get hit? They were clearly bad card design because they were too broken. Abyss Lind with Abyss Sphere was dumb. Stuff like that, for example. But it all got answered the minute that Lord of the Tachyon Galaxy came out. The minute that Dragon Rulers had their showing in the OCG, we realized that Dragon Rulers are going to be absolutely ridiculous. And it was only until that particular day, one of the worst days of Yu-Gi-Oh! History, when the Baby Rulers came out, that it turns out that, like, Dragon Rulers are the most broken deck in existence. I mean, even Telidad can't compare to Dragon Rulers. They were just so broken with Super Rejuvenation, everything. So, Mermails got knocked out. So, the question is, which you're probably asking me right now, is how does this link into Fire and Ice Hand? Well, basically, what this means is that Fire and Ice Hand are so splashable in everything that Konami might hit them because they want to diversify the game. But at the same time, it's only because of their sort of intention to kind of eliminate previous cards and move forward, right? But if the metagame is really dumb, and then you can either get rid of these old cards, or you can bring in something else. So Fire and Ice Hand are only as good as as when they go off. Sometimes they just sit there and do nothing. It's a waste of a normal summon. It is slowing your deck down if you decide to run it. It is a very control-y card, Fire and Ice Hand, and obviously you combine it with artifacts. So you combine it with those cards. So they have a lot of splashability and Madolche artifacts, tons of different decks. So Konami is just going to hit them. It's kind of like, how are we going to hit them in such a way so that the game's still diverse, the game can still move forward, with them in the game, but still allowing new decks to come about and kind of push them out into obscurity, rather than what Mermails did, where they were pushed out but by a deck that was so broken because Mermails were broken, but they thought, oh, let's keep Mermails around because they're a money cow, and then let's bring in something even more ridiculous to take over, and it was like, okay, well, that's obviously a stupid idea, and that's not healthy for the game, so that was terrible by Konami. They could have just hit them instead. So, in this case, they're not as broken as something like Mermails, because if you just put a Fire Hand against Mermails, chances are they'll have an out for it, like a Abyss Dweller or something like that, or anything just like I don't know, anything. So we could say that fire or ice hand, one of them can go to 1. Both of them can go to 1, but that means that when you attack with one, you get the other one, and then it's like, oh, like, what's the point? That's it, I'm done. I only get, like, to put 1 spell trap and 1 monster. You can bring them to 2, and then you would still get some recursion, and that means that when you draw 2 of them at once, the engine doesn't work, because it means it's as if you're playing it at 1. So it's kind of like you don't really want to do that. So you need to find a way to balance them out so that they're not stupidly broken, like you're attacking into monsters, popping monsters and spells and traps just because they established a board. It's not really fair. So in that sense, I think it makes sense to bring one of them to 1 and then keep the other one at 3 so that it doesn't clog the ban list, and also that you actually see that they're doing that. Konami consciously notices that Ice Hand and Fire Hand are not very good at the game. For the game. I mean, one thing that I noticed with the cards was that they have this tendency to be incredibly difficult to get rid of, because in this game, bouncing, spinning, and banishing are incredibly expensive and then taxing on your resources. Like, for example, Spellbook of Fate is very specific to Spellbook. Spellbooks is not very nice for other decks to come around, you know, like other cards to come in. Like Kaiku was very like, you have to run it because of Dragon is being stupid. But realistically, Spellbooks are very, very like cookie cutter in how they are. Like, you know, you generally just play the same 38 cards or something. You always run 3 secrets, so you always had Spellbook of Fate at 1 or as many as you could play. So it was very expensive for the deck, because you had to banish 3 to banish something. So Fire and Ice Hand couldn't deal with Spellbooks very easily if they have that consistent way of getting Fate live. So that sucked. For stuff like Phoenix Wing Blast, I mean, that card was you have to discard a card to bounce something. There's only very few decks in the game that can discard a card for a card's effect and not take a neg, which is something like Mythic Rulers. So Mythic Rulers are one of those decks that get fucked over super hard by Fire and Ice Hand because they have such massive monsters, and they have stuff like Dragon's Ravine when they were around, but that's not really that important. But they have things like Face Down, so they have to resort to negging themselves because Fire and Ice Hand are literally disadvantaged cards, you know. You have to use stupid things like Phoenix Wing Blast to put it back on the top of the deck, and then it means they draw it and then they carry on. So you generally gives you another turn to do something, but generally is like, you know, you're still fucked anyway, unless of course you can OTK that turn. So the last one is bouncing, and compulsory is good for that, but then it's kind of like, oh yeah, they summon it again next turn. You know, if it pushes them back a turn, it's not like Gears where they have to reset the armor, and then you're like, oh, I've got to play on turn 4, play on turn 6. But this card, you can just summon it and just attack and like make them bait out stuff, because, you know, destroying by card or battle is really like pretty much generally what's going to happen regardless of what you think. So in my opinion, I feel like it's an if rather than a when these cards are going to get hit. I just don't know what they're going to do to it, but there's many different options, many different solutions to keeping these cards in the game, but keeping them, putting them at a level so that people push away from them and say, I don't really want to play this half-assed engine. It's like Reborn Tengu, you know, the fact that it went to 2, you can still, you know, do some nice advantage of it, you know, the fact that it is removed from the field, so you can literally do anything with it, and then it gets another one from the deck. So it was the same kind of thing, except Reborn Tengu at 2 meant that it didn't really exist as an engine anymore. If you draw both of them, it's a normal card in your hand, and there's nothing you can do. You have to find a way to keep them in the game, but not completely destroy them, but still allow new decks to come along and push them into obscurity. So, hope you guys enjoyed watching. Sorry if I repeated myself a couple of times, but I feel like it's a very broad topic to talk about. So comment down below whether or not you think they're going to get hit, and if you think they're going to get hit, what do you think is going to happen to them? What do you think is the most optimal solution to Fire and Ice Hand in this game? So thanks for watching, guys, and until next time, the Thetcglover is out.